We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has been feeling the brunt of the full court press of the Fourth Estate due to various apparently moral and legal shenanigans, none of which appear to have risen to the level of criminality or ethical concern. But why are they after him? And what could be in the way to stop this onslaught against the justice? Well, we're lucky to be joined by legal affairs editor, host of the excellent Uprising Podcast, man about town, Mr. Scott DeCosenza, and birthday boy. I wish you a happy birthday for this particular week, Scott. Scott DeCosenza, thanks for being here.
Right back at you. We
are birth twins, but not
Yes.
obviously with birth.
No.
So, Scott,
Really
we've seen Justice Thomas undergo article after article, news segment after news segment, explaining how he's an ethically corrupt
I don't know
person.
what the right word for a conspiracy that is not terribly well organized, but that has a common goal.
Oh, it's a government conspiracy.
No, not government. No, not government.
No, I mean one that's not terribly well organized.
Oh,
Yes,
oh,
it's
right.
a government
Yeah,
conspiracy.
I love that. Excuse me. I appreciate that. No, what I mean to say is there has been obviously an effort to publish on Justice Thomas and really anything negative from the highest of criticism that they could manage, which is that he had been friends with a billionaire and accepted lavish presents of travel, down to the most preposterous was, I think, that he was a member of an exclusive group, and that group, he allowed them to use the Supreme Court chambers for their ribbon ceremony annually or something like that, and somehow that was inappropriate. No actual inappropriateness that we might see in terms of judging or altering opinions, but just who he consorts with, if you would.
Now, Scott, you wrote a fantastic article this last week on why you think these attacks against Justice Thomas might just stop. They might not be at the forefront of the media push anymore. Would you like to explain to our listeners why that is, if they haven't been wise enough to go and read you on the site, on the pages of libertynation.com?
The attacks against Justice Thomas, I think there's very little there. There's some things that are there. So Justice Thomas, for instance, his rich friend paid for his nephew to attend a private school.
Now, let me just clarify that. That's his great nephew, and to which most people in both your country and mine are what? This is somebody who's your grandfather's brother's son's cousin or something along those lines. Second cousin twice removed. I'm trying to remember my Spaceballs.
In any case, but that's less important than the fact that the reason why Mr. Crow paid for the tuition was because of this person's consanguinity with Justice Thomas. And I put that in for any lawyers listening. That means that they're related by blood.
Sure.
And that's why Mr. Crow, basically, the gist of what it sounded like, I wasn't party to the conversation, sadly. The gist of what it sounded like, Mark, was Thomas indicated that he had this troubles, this kid in his life who he was taking care for. Virginia and Clarence Thomas stepped in to raise the boy from at some point in his life because of his home situation not working out. And he had been at a school for somewhat troubled youth, and he was needing to go to a different school. And Crow is a supporter of this academy and is a graduate there, and he's a billionaire. So I'm guessing he's got a fondness for it. He throws a ton of dough. He's probably on the board. He probably, everything is probably through him there, and he can put somebody in the school if he wants to. And so that's what he did. And I could totally understand how that looks a little bit hinky maybe to some people, but because he doesn't have business before the court, and because Justice Thomas has disclosed his friendship and also has to recuse himself if any business before the court if any of Mr. Harlan's businesses do come before the court, it's not terribly ethically challenging. Juxtapose that with what we know now about Ms. Sotomayor.
Yes,
Ms. Sotomayor,
Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. This blew me away when I heard it, Scott. If I do hope our listeners have heard this. If not, let's give them a.
And sorry for not calling her Justice at the outset. Justice Sotomayor is an author. She authored her first book not just quite a year after getting to the Supreme Court. She hadn't authored any books previously, and then she authored a memoir after becoming confirmed to the court, which she got millions of dollars in advance payments for. And since then, she's focused on children's books, and she's written a whole bunch of them and sells quite a few of them to the tune of getting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in income. But now we know, Mark, that she uses court staff, taxpayer-funded employees of the Supreme Court to make this book empire work. And the two examples that we have that just seem so totally beyond the pale, Mark, we have her assistant, Ms. Lee, who is a court employee, admonishing municipal libraries who have invited the justice to come and speak at their facilities that they're not buying enough books to have on hand for the attendees. And when they say, oh, well, maybe you should address that with the bookseller or the publisher, this is the librarian saying it to Justice Sotomayor's aide and assistant. She replies, you don't have enough books. She's not going to bring it up with the publisher. She wants that person. So she's putting the lever, okay? Justice Sotomayor's aide is doing this. And then we learn that in this 11,000 book order, and I didn't put this in the article just there was so much data to kind of digest and decide what to put in and not. Mark, the 11,000 books that Justice Sotomayor had her aide press Supreme Court employees in the service of moving around. Apparently, by the way, she signed all 11,000. So you can imagine what a project that would have been for the court staff to kind of get that all squared away and over how much time. Okay. But the books were sold to the University of Michigan, of course, taxpayer funded University of Michigan. So how wonderful for the justice. And my suggestion is that the comparison between these two is so vast and so dire. You know, it's one thing if you're preaching to your kids to eat healthy and you sneak a candy bar in the car as terms of hypocrisy. It's another thing if you're the world's most fire and brimstone preacher and you've got liquor and boys in your car as you're driving down the road. I mean, that's the level, I think, of the gulf here between these two behaviors. And that's why I think this could be a fatal case of hypocrisy for the war on Thomas.
Yeah, it seems that if it were to continue through the pages and the column inches of the Fourth Estate, that it would be their already sullied reputation that would suffer an even greater, perhaps even fatal blow to not cover with such, let's call it what it is. It's a relish that they have for going after Justice Thomas because of his jurisprudence, because of his opinions. And because he's
a black
mold.
Man with those opinions. Let's not forget.
Mark, he doesn't fit their mold. And so they've either got to risk stupendous amount of hypocrisy, or they've got to go after Justice Sotomayor for something that is quite clearly to the public. It's not something that requires, forgive me, Scott, it doesn't require lawyers to explain the difference here between the two sets of circumstances. And I think you might be right that we might see an easing off on Justice Thomas because they don't want to go after Justice Sotomayor. Now,
she's no mere ally, by the way. She drives the car over there in terms of the progressive, the progressive wing of the court.
Yeah, it's really, it would be sacrificing the progressive wing of which she is the lead voice to go after her as well. Now, I think we both understand that the Fourth Estate in America and Europe is just dishonest enough to say, well, let's not go after Justice Sotomayor, even though it's arguably a very big and important story. Now, did Justice
let me interrupt you if I might, Mark, and just say this. I certainly don't think that people who write these stories are going to be less interested in attacking Clarence Thomas, and the reason why is because I heard you say that he doesn't fit into their ideas of what's acceptable, sort of. But even more than that, his very existence proves them wrong, right? That he is who he is, and so I think they will. But here's what I do think will happen significantly. We know that according to the AP's self reporting, they spent innumerable hours getting through tens of thousands of documents. They've filed over 100 public record requests. So they've put a ton of resources into this. So while I think we'll see the opinion pieces come out that denigrate Justice Thomas, the splashing of resources, that anti-Thomas groups have spent millions to run commercials and produce and run commercials denigrating Thomas. But when people hear about what he's alleged to have done and then juxtapose that with Sotomayor, that's where I think we're really going to see that movement peter off.
Well, the AP reports they could of course have just borrowed the Supreme Court staff to do their work for them. Scott D. Cosenza, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Mark.
And that's about all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'd like to thank our guests, Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Joe Schaefer, and Scott D. Cosenza. And of course, extend my thanks to you, the listeners, for tuning in each week. Remember to tune in next week where we'll be examining all the political shenanigans of the week and the upcoming Supreme Court session. You don't want to miss it. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, the Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.